We are live right here on the Sixers Digest YouTube channel. Got me, as usual, Sean Barnard, hanging with my guy Cliff Jackson right here, and we are here to break down the ideal Sixers offseason. So plenty to get into, a lot of names being thrown around, a lot of rumors being, thrown in the mix and names recycled. So the first things first, Cliff, I'm going to throw it to you. If you're Daryl Morey right now, what is your number one option?
Oh, easily LeBron. Hands down is Bron. If there's any possible chance that you can get him from the Lakers and like he says, all right, well I'll spend my last 2 years really trying to get on a contender and really trying to win a championship. I do think that the Sixers are the only option really as far as like contending teams. And I think we're the only team that has the cap space to be able to sign him. Like he's not going to go to the Magic. I think they're just too young right now. But Sixers have the perfect mix of youth with Tyrese Maxey, veteran leadership with Joel Embiid. He can come in, they can build a team however they want, playing cap space, but that would be my number one option.
Yeah, I'm with you there that I do think if LeBron was remotely an option, I would be in on it. And to dive into a little bit about LeBron James, we all know who he is at this point, but to dive into the stats here, just this season, 25.7 points per game, 7.3 rebounds, 8.3 assists, 1.3 steals, shot 41% from beyond the three-point arc this year, also 45.7% on corner three-pointers. The bottom line to me is this guy still got his fastball, that this isn't a dude that is falling off in the twilights of his career, that forget all the LeBron James at his age. Let's talk about LeBron James, period. That this guy is still playing at an incredibly high level and stuff that I am super impressed to see. So I'm with you. I think the biggest play here, and to bring up this conversation directly, so it is no coincidence, I believe, that the Sixers hold the 16th pick in this draft. The Lakers hold the 17th pick in this draft. Now, we know that the Lakers, it seems like all signs pointing towards J.J. Redick being the head coach. There's been all these talks about the Bronny James wanting to play with his father. Is it worth taking Bronny James at 16 if that means that you're getting LeBron to come with him?
Absolutely. So I talked about this before, but like absolutely, if you have LeBron James, who is top two basketball player of all time, like you saw, you read off all the stats. You have the ability to bring in a LeBron James, someone of that caliber who doesn't look like he's slowing down for a 40-year-old. But if you have the opportunity to just bring in Bronny, and Bronny is not this he's not all downside, right?
Yeah.
He's a lot of upside if you want to look at him that way. Defensively, is able to knock down the three ball. So if you have the opportunity to bring in Bronny, to bring in LeBron James, and you have him being pretty much mentored by his father, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid, pretty much an upside. You do whatever you can. 16, whoever, weak draft. So what? Take Bronny, and then you get LeBron James. So
Yeah.
what?
And I'll put the caveat next to this for myself. For starters, we do know there is the relationship there, that there is the clutch sports ties with Tyrese Maxey, that we know that these guys have trained together through Chris Johnson hoops. Obviously, these Sixers will be sitting down and hammering out a max contract with Tyrese Maxey at some point in the summer. My guess is that pretty much is understood and the numbers are all set in stone. But for cap reasons, that will wait for the end of the summer to make sure, because they can get in this third star by managing it and using that order of operations there. But if you're already having those conversations with Rich Paul, let's talk about another guy and bring LeBron James to the forefront there. Now, kind of my backtrack here is, unless you have that type of guarantee, unless you know that LeBron is coming with Bronny, I have zero interest in Bronny James. And to be perfectly honest, I want the Sixers to use the 16th pick. I think there's a ton of NBA-ready role players that they can add with that, and we've seen this team pass up on young talent on far too many opportunities already. Guys like Tristan da Silva are players that I think can make a day-one impact. Bronny James is the worst case of all this, that he's very raw, he's not going to be ready right away, and like the investment in Bronny, which I'm not out on as an NBA prospect as a whole, but the bottom line is it's going to be years until you're seeing what that brings back. So for this Sixers team, to me, it's either trade that pick or use it on a guy that you can win now, unless there is that guarantee that Bronny's bringing his dad.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. Like, unless you get a guarantee from Bron, you just don't use you either use that pick or you trade it, or you maybe you look at Bronny in the second round, but you don't use the 16th overall pick. Like I said, I've been saying a lot, like this draft class is weak as far as like superstar talent. But
Right.
there's definitely some guys like a team like the Sixers could definitely use. So I was looking at like Dalton Connect, maybe Jared McCain if he drops, but like different type of players like that the Sixers could absolutely use just to infuse some youth in it, have them grow with Tyrese, learn from Joel. It's a lot of like mentorship and leadership that I feel like it needs to go into building this next team and really looking at what builds a championship contender. So like you said, they either need to trade the pick, or they just need to use it and like use it well and not do some like Euro stash
Right.
BS.
Yeah.
But that's how I think.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. And the other part to bring in here is LeBron essentially would have to make sure he wants to come to Philadelphia. That to bring up the contract specifically here, the LeBron sitting on these days, still 50 million, and it is the player option there, so he could opt out of that contract. What I do think is especially notable here is the deadline on whether he opts in or out is after the NBA draft. So we will know the conclusion with Bronny there. But I will say, as much as the JJ Redick conversation, there's plenty of jokes to be made about, like, I can't wait for the episode of the podcast where they're picking assistant coaches and things like that. But the bottom line is I do think that trends toward LeBron James staying in the Lakers jersey next year. That I think that's the likely outcome, is that is going to be taken off the table. Now, the problem here is the next guy that I do want to bring up and talk about is Paul George, who's in a similar boat, who would have to command leaving LA on his own. A little bit more cut and dry situation with Paul George, as he can be a direct free agent. It does seem like that the Clippers are unwilling to give him that max contract. So, Cliff, what are your thoughts on Paul George, and where does he rank in comparison?
So my whole thing with Paul George is literally his age. Like, he's the perfect seamless fit next to Tyrese and Joel. He can work off ball. He's a play initiator, shot creator, can defend. Does have some like low playoff moments, but I've been saying it. If you switch Paul George's playoffs this season with Tobias's playoffs,
Night and day.
they beat the Knicks, and pretty easily, and they beat the Knicks. But as far as like, it's literally like the downsides are literally like his age and having to give him a max contract at the age of 35. And that's my only downfall with it. But as far as skill set and what you want in a player next to Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, Paul George is the perfect fit. I have another player that is the perfect fit to me that a lot of people aren't going to like, but Paul George is the perfect fit.
Perfect. Well, we're going to jump into that in a second, but to stay with Paul George for a second here, to talk about what he brings to the table, that just this season, averaging 22.6 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.5 steals per game, shot 41.3% from beyond the three-point arc on 7.9 three-point attempts per game. He shoots 45.7% on corner three-point attempts, and 47.6% of all of his shots are three-pointers. I love that I for years have complained about the lack of volume three-point shooting. I think it's essential to provide spacing around Joel Embiid. And Paul George, to me, is that perfect complement of that. He can be a stationary shooter where he's essentially a floor spacer, optimized, just sitting in the corner, ready for catch and shoot opportunities. And there's more to him than that. That when worst comes to worst, or when there's situations that dictate it or need it, that he can put the ball on the floor, create for himself, even create for others as a playmaker to an extent, that there's more to him, but he still can be optimized just being that floor spacer. And then when you pair that with the fact that he is just a straight up free agent, that you don't have to dig into this treasure chest of draft picks or assets to bring him to Philadelphia, for me, Paul George would be my number one choice, even though understanding the big fish of LeBron James. So do you think that's fair to have that outlook, to have Paul George as my number one when considering not needing to give anything up?
Yeah, it's definitely, you definitely can't like frown your face. Like I have another number one other than LeBron, but it's for completely different reasons. But if you look at Paul George, like I said, it's literally just his age. If Paul George was 33, I'll be all on board, but just not 35 and have to offering him a max contract. But then again, I was saying it all season with the Eagles, like all season with the Eagles. Who cares? It's not my money. So other than that, Paul George has the perfect skill set that you, like I said, that you want to put next to Joel and Tyrese. He's able to work off ball. He's able to just stand in the corner and knock down stationary threes. It's something that you absolutely need. He's able to defend on the other end. Like, so if they ran into the Boston Celtics, that now gives you another wing defender in Paul George that's able to guard Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. It doesn't look like he's slowing down on defense either. So the only thing with him is his age and like his low playoff moments. We all know a lot of people call him playoff P, but that's just something that you will hope they would overcome with the talent of Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid. You're just like, all right, one of them has to be going off at some point. And that's basically like how you have to think about it.
Yeah.
Like, so if Paul George has 8, the Maxey has to have 35, or if Paul George has 8, Maxey has 16. Joel has to have 40. Like, this is what you have to assume. Maybe Maxey and Joel are now on you. All right, Paul has 30. And that's all you have to think about when playing. And it's not Joel has 40, Tyrese has 16, Tobias has 0. Like, that's just what you have to hope doesn't happen with a Paul George. And I don't think that will happen. He might have a game where he has 8, but it's more than 0. And what Tobias gave us in game 6.
Yeah.
So you just have to think of it that way.
Yeah, I don't think it can be overstated how big of a gap there is between Paul George and Tobias Harris. That I truly think I could make the argument that Tobias Harris contract will age as some of the worst per capita dollars spent in NBA history, especially factoring the fact that this dude played. Like, this wasn't a situation where he got hurt or wasn't available. He was there all the time. He just was straight up not good enough. So super frustrating there. But Cliff, I got to hear it from you. Who is this perfect player that you think is going to upset some people?
Oh, Zach LaVine.
I figured.
So, all right, do you want to hear why or?
Yeah, give me the pitch. Give me the sales pitch here.
All right, so all right, so first of all, I'm always a big Zach LaVine fan just because his athleticism, he's able to run the floor, he's faster, he's younger than all of the other options outside of Brandon Ingram. He is turning 30, but that's good veteran age to where he knows the NBA, he knows how to win, he can work off ball with Tyrese Maxey, but he's also one of those players that could also take over a game. So if Tyrese or Joel doesn't have it going, now Zach LaVine can get his going. He can play initiate. He can play initiate. He's a shot creator. All those good things, can work off ball, like I've already talked about. But just his pure athleticism. This is my main pitch, right? We saw how Kelly Oubre looked. As I said, we were all acting like Kelly Oubre was this specimen that we have never saw, and it's true because we have never seen a player with Kelly Oubre's athleticism on the Sixers. It feels like outside of like Ben Simmons or somebody, like outside of the stars, right? Mm-hmm. So if you add a player like Zach LaVine with his athleticism and his shot creating, people are going to be acting like he's a god on this team, and that's exactly what he's going to look like. And it's somebody that Joel has never played with. So let's stop with the old people trying to bring them on the ladder hill of their career. You could possibly look at Zach LaVine maybe entering his prime here and what he's going to look like next to Joel, next to Maxey. Just imagine a Maxey Zach LaVine fast break. And that's my pitch, and that's why I like it. Like, I'm gonna say he shoots a lot of threes. Good.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
But that's my pitch is for Zach LaVine.
I'll be honest, it's a bit of a lonely island, but I join you as a Zach LaVine optimist here. For starters, like, I think he's viewed, we've seen the reports of the Bulls dropping their price, that they want to do essentially a salary dump deal. He's being viewed as such as this damaged good in a way that I just don't think is quite fair to him. Like, this dude's a legitimate all-star when he's healthy, and the injury concerns are for sure legitimate. There are some issues with maybe the motor or how locked in he was, but in fairness to him, like, that was a Bulls team going nowhere. It's not like he's been in the situation where he's playing for a true contender, which we've seen how that's been capable of raising the level of guys' games in other situations. And to get into the stats for
Kelly Oubre.
Yeah, Kelly Oubre, a perfect example there. And to get into the stats for what he's bringing to the table, just last season, 19.5 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, 3.9 assists, had a down year shooting at 34.9% from beyond the arc and 45.2% overall, but still shot 45.2% on corner threes, and also 44.9% of his shots come from beyond the arc in general. I love that. I'm with you that that's absolutely a pro, that should be looked at as a good thing with Zach LaVine, that he's willing to be a gunner, that he's willing to launch it and let it fly from that. We got Philly Insider Podcast chiming in saying, I take LaVine if we miss out on the other notable names. And if the trade cost is cheap enough. That is kind of the conversation here. A guy that has very much piqued my interest in trying to make this happen is attaching him with Alex Caruso. If that is the case, then I'm very interested in digging into these assets. Yeah. So you're in on that trade if that's kind of the premise there?
Absolutely. I tweeted it like last week. Like, if you get Zach LaVine and they add an asset, like, there's no way you don't immediately take that deal.
Right.
And like you said, as far as revitalizing players' careers, when you look around the league, look at the Dallas Mavericks, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, playing for two of the worst teams in the NBA. PJ Washington was like a joke before he joined the Dallas Mavericks. You look at players like Derek White who are playing for really bad teams, and you might not think, all right, well, they're not locked in. It's not that big of a pickup. Look at what playing for a championship contender does. Look at what maybe a Nick Nurse can instill in one of these players as far as like, all right, well, now I'm playing for a real coach. I'm playing with real players, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey. We have a real chance to win. I'm going to go all out because this is the first time in my career that I have had a chance to win and win at a high level. We saw it with Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre loves Philly. And it's probably because this is the only time he has been able to truly compete outside of like his Golden State days. Mm-hmm. So if you look at something like that, you want to bring in Zach LaVine, who maybe he, like you say, he's probably checked out over there in Chicago. He probably just needs a new change of scenery.
Yeah.
And you don't want him going anywhere else. If you want a player like that, you want him going to Philly. Athleticism, he's exciting, shot creator, all that good stuff. But yeah, absolutely. If you attach an asset, especially if they're dumb enough to attach Caruso with them,
Yeah.
you absolutely do that.
And just to play a little devil's advocate here, to jump into kind of the elephant in the room with LaVine, it is that contract that you can see here. It is massive, that we're talking about a huge figure that he is still owed, pulling that up on the screen right now. And on top of that, Kobe White, the emergence was very strange last year. That Kobe White essentially filling Zach LaVine's shoes after he did get injured and was shut down. Watching Kobe White step to center stage and look incredible after LaVine just straight up didn't this year is a little bit concerning. But the Kobe White trajectory has been weird also, that he has had a ton of promise coming in the NBA, showed some signs of that through the first 2 years, and then kind of nosedived, and then it was the resurgence of Kobe White last year. Love Kobe White, so no shade on that by any means, but it was strange that LaVine kind of wasn't succeeding in the same setting there. But regardless, I do think this is a situation where he needs a change of scenery. And if he's ready to play some winning basketball, we've seen him do it for stretches. And the other point with the ties here, I know I mentioned this with LeBron, Zach LaVine, also a clutch sports guy. And on top of that, he's also a Drew Hanlon guy that he has trained with Joel Embiid. He's also a New Balance guy that he's done commercials with Tyrese Maxey. So there are a lot of relationships there. And in general, the Sixers team, mostly due to Joel Embiid, is not a team with a ton of, the tampering or their connections or anything like that. So I do think it is worth noting that there are some connections with LaVine there. So yeah, so is it fair to assess your list would be 1 LeBron, 2 Paul George, and 3 Zach LaVine, Cliff?
Oh, no. It's
Okay.
LeBron, Zach LaVine,
Wow.
and Paul George. Like I said, Paul George strictly because of age. I don't know if you had the numbers. What is Zach LaVine's? I forgot. What is his contract exactly?
Yeah, let me pull.
Oop.
Sorry, I'm multitasking on the screen here, pulling it up.
Nah, you're fine.
And to pull it up exactly, I believe right at. I will pull it up on the side. Let me talk through it real quick. So if we are,
No, you're fine.
and we will get this off. I gotta working the multi-screens open right now, so doing my best with it, but getting through it. If I can get this off here. So with Zach LaVine, if that is not the case, if he is not available or he's looking at another location, where would be the next direction that you would go to this point?
For like the next player that the Sixers will look at.
Yep.
At Malik Monk, then I would look at building a team around a lot of like just really athletic, fast role players around Joel and Tyrese Maxey. That way we can get up and down the floor. It's like the same thing with the Eagles on football. It's like flying around where you're like, oh my God, like how are they going to hit us next? And that's the type of style of play like I want with the Sixers, just flying up and down. Like it might be a little bit slow with Joel, but I say it like I use a lot of comparisons. I say, why don't we just do what the Dolphins did, where they just are just adding a bunch of fast players, like just add a bunch of fast players next to Maxey and see what happens. Like just do something like that, to where it's like, all right, this is they're just gonna run you, kind of like what the Pacers did. They're gonna run you off the floor, and there's nothing you can really do about it. Like something like that. Just try something. I don't want Brandon Ingram, and that's just where I'm at. But a player like Malik Monk, who is exciting, I don't know if he'll succeed in the starting role as he did coming off the bench as a 6-man, but that's just where I'm. I would go Malik Monk, and I think he'll be cheaper than a lot.
Yeah, and we are all back straightened out on the stream here. To answer your question initially, the Zach LaVine conversation, he's due $43 million this year, $45.9 million next year, and then $49.9 million the following. So 43 this year, 45.9, and then 49.9 for Zach LaVine. So that is hefty.
Got it. So what will we offer Paul George?
A shade over that he's going to come to. So Paul George will cost more. Paul George is going to be touching $50 million a year.
What are we talking about? So all right. So if you're willing to give Paul George that contract and not Zach LaVine, even though Paul George does as far as defensive wise, yeah, you could look at Paul George, but like, why not just give it? Zach LaVine's younger, faster, more athletic, can play with Tyrese. I don't know. But
so
yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
Here's my thing with the money situation. When they reach a certain point, it doesn't matter. Like when you're out of money to spend there. So like with Paul George and Zach LaVine, that contract stuff, that's the exact same to me. That it does not matter with that regard. You should be making it just on the player. my ultimate Paul George, why I lean on that is this again, that you don't have to do the dance of making a trade. And the Bulls, by the way, horribly run organization who have not traded a player since 2021. So we're still asking them to do something crazy here. Yeah, it's absurd just how satisfied they are.
They have not traded a player since 2020. What are they doing?
Correct. And it's insane because they're the most like mediocre basketball team in the world. They're just, content living as the 10th seed year in and year out. But whatever, it is what it is there. To bring up the Malik Monk conversation a little more, I entered this offseason very much interested in Malik Monk. For me, I think the opportunity cost that it would take to get him and more or less the guys that they would pass up on, I do think is not concerning there, but something I land on. Maybe it is not fully worth it for that to be the case. I like Monk's game. He's incredibly fun to watch. Like, he's one of my favorite players, even dating back to Kentucky. I think it's cool that him and Fox have reunited and he found success in Sacramento, but I do have doubts about how he can hang defensively. And like, when you're thinking about like that third star, I'm not sure he's like this complementary middling piece between Embiid and Maxey in the same way that I do feel about the other guys that we're mentioning.
Yeah. Like, I completely get what you're saying, and I completely forgot about another name and Donovan Mitchell. I don't know why they just fell off like my radar. That was like my number one option, really. I don't know why they just fell off. Oh, because the reports were coming out that he was like going to stay in Cleveland or something like that. But yeah, no, I completely get what you're talking about from Malik Monk. Like I said, I struggle with if he'll have success starting next to Tyrese and Joel, and defensively as far as when he came off the bench. I mean, as far as coming off the bench and everything. But yeah, that like it's the same concerns, but like that's why he's down at number 5 and not in the top 3. So.
Yeah. I'm with you, and appreciate for everybody for hanging out with us in the chat tonight. I do want to jump in an interesting comment from our guy Reggie Driver here. Cliff, what are your thoughts on Reggie saying, I would go after Klay Thompson before LaVine or Monk? He's a better complementary piece than the rest of who's been mentioned. From your face, not a fan there?
Klay! He's old. Klay is old, slow. Like, all right. I just want to make something clear. I'm gonna be happy no matter what they do, because like it's new players finally. Hopefully they understand like we're going in a new direction of we need to be younger. Well, not even particularly younger, but we need to be more athletic, more versatile. People need to do more things. But after the season Klay just had, I'm just not a fan. He can really, I mean, he can work off ball. He's not really a great defender anymore. Old, like the knee thing is really the knee problems are like really a thing. He's just older and slower now, and I'm not really. He doesn't do anything else, so it's just like those are my issues like with Klay. If they get him, yes, we have Klay Thompson. I'm gonna act like he's 23, so it doesn't matter.
All right, I'll make the Klay Thompson pitch here then. So I'll start by saying this wouldn't be my guy. That wouldn't be the third piece to me, but this does speak to if they're going towards more of this overplay role players and maybe get 2 guys in that middling contract in that 20 to 30 million rather than 1 for 50 in the way that it's looked at for like a Paul George. If Klay's a piece of that, I can talk myself into it. That he certainly is not the Klay Thompson we once knew, but he's still a guy who's a dead-eye shooter. And think about how sweet it would look if we're talking about Klay Thompson knocking down catch-and-shoot threes off Joel Embiid doubles. That is easy money. That even Klay, who had a down year by all accounts, shot 38.7% from beyond the three-point arc last year on 9 attempts per game. The year prior, 41.2% on 10.6 three-point attempts per game. Through his career, he's a 41.3% three-point shooter on 7.6 three-point attempts per game. I would love a guy who you just know his baseball card for being such a high-volume, high-efficiency three-point shooter, and that is Klay Thompson. He's certainly limited. He's not going to be like this number 3 guy in the way that I think the Sixers are certainly searching for, but I do see a world where Klay Thompson can absolutely feast playing off Joel Embiid.
Yeah, now that you talk about it like that, I can definitely be talked into it. I don't know if you agree, but I feel like Joel Embiid is the only other player in the NBA that has the gravity that Steph has. So like wherever he is, like 6 different pairs of eyes on him. And like you said, just Klay Thompson knocking down wide open threes off of Joel Embiid double teams will be beautiful. We thought that was going to happen with Buddy Hield, but that's a completely different player, completely different. I don't know what happened there until game 6, but yeah, that's where I'm like I said, I can be talked into almost anything just because I know it's going to be a completely different team, and they seemingly have like a direction in where they want to go.
So interesting. So you said you can be talked in just about anybody. A guy that I get a sense that you're not in on here is Brandon Ingram. I did want to throw him in the mix
Oh,
and bring him up here. I also will bring up the Jimmy Butler conversation following, which might have been where you thought I was
okay.
going here. We'll start with Ingram, who, of course,
Mm.
is younger. To bring up the baseball card, what he brings to the table this season, averaging 20.8 points per game, 5.1 rebounds, 5.7 assists per game, which I do think people are not aware enough of that. 2.5 turnovers, shot 35.5% from three, 49.2% from the field overall, shoots 35.5% from the corner as well, and only 23.8% of his shots come from beyond the arc. He's much more comfortable operating out of the mid-range. He is a guy that, isn't going to be a high-volume three-point shooter in the same way. Cliff, talk to me a little bit about what you see from Brandon Ingram here.
So I watch a lot of Brandon Ingram because I bet he kind of his number. If you look at his numbers, they're eerily similar to Tobias's.
Yes.
And he kind of operates in the same space, but except for he's a lot better at playmaking. Like you already, you spoke on with I think you said 5.7 assists.
Yeah.
But he does operate a lot where Tobias operates. Their numbers are similar, and he makes shots. He makes the game of basketball just entirely too hard on himself. He takes way too difficult shots. I mean, even in the playoffs, I remember he took a step back three, was wide open, and then waited for the defender to come, and then shot it while it was contested. But what are you doing? But just me watching him, he takes a lot of mid ranges, like you said, with not a high volume 3-point shooter. I think he only shot 3-point, like you said, 3.8.
3.8. Yep.
3-pointers are per game. Yeah, 3.8 3-pointers per game this season. Yeah, it's reminding me a little bit of Tobias. I just don't want to go through that again. I just don't think he's that complimentary to Tyrese and Joel. If you're not going to shoot a lot of threes, I don't really want you on the team. So I don't. Yeah, that's my thing with Brandon. And it's just he just makes the game of basketball entirely too hard on himself.
Yeah, for the most part, I'm with you. For some of the appeals, for starters, I do think is some credence to the concerns from Ingram's camp that it wasn't a great fit with him, that I think him and Zion operated some similar space. And also, both C.J. McCollum and Trey Murphy kind of established themselves as the three-point gunners that gave Ingram kind of the freedom to shoot in the middle. That if you flash back 3 seasons, that he was putting up 6.2 three-point attempts per game in back-to-back years, that's more appealing if we're talking about that type of volume from beyond the arc. But for exact reference here, that Tobias Harris this year from beyond the three-point arc attempted 3.7 per game. For Brandon Ingram, we're talking about 3.8. So that's not what I want. I have called him tattooed up Tobias Harris on multiple occasions. I don't exactly mean that. He's certainly better than Tobias. The playmaking is
absolutely better.
Yeah, absolutely better, but not by the margin that I think we should be comfortable here. And the other part of the appeal is absolutely the contract. He's on the books in the final year of his deal, that it does not seem like the Pelicans are going to give him a max extension or even a contract extension at all. It does feel like the two sides are destined to go their different directions. He's due $36 million this year. So we're talking about $14 million less than a guy like Paul George. This is kind of opening the door that you could possibly get an Ingram and then maybe a Klay Thompson or a Malik Monk or something like that, which is part of the appeal. So if that's the conversation, do you think the Sixers are better off going for that depth, bringing in two pieces, or swinging the fences for like a Paul George?
Ooh. So, all right, see, that's a great question because if they do get a Brandon Ingram or a Klay Thompson, I would assume if they're getting them separately or something like that. But I would assume they're bringing in another piece. I'm fine with bringing in two players just to maximize the cap space. Is another roster hole to fill because it's not going to be easy building an entirely new roster around them. Maybe re-sign Kelly, re-sign Batum. You still have to build an entire roster out around essentially two players. So I'm completely fine with that. They bring in somebody. I just don't want them to bring in that one person. It's going to be Brandon Ingram, Malik Monk, Klay. I just don't want that one person to be the move. They need to compound multiple moves. Now, if they're going to swing big, then you can look at some of the lesser players, maybe like an Obi Toppin, or somebody that's athletic, that can shoot, that can run, jump, and just see how they fit, how they look in an offense where Joel Embiid is going to have so much gravity, and now Maxey is going to get blitzed or trapped at almost half court because that's just what the offense is going to warrant. So I'm on the fence with swinging big if you are going to get a LeBron Paul George, Zach LaVine, because those are the type of players you need to win. You build out the roster around them. But if they do go the other route with like filling like medium stars, like borderline all-star type players like Clay, Brandon Ingram, players like that, as long as you bring in another piece and you compound on those pieces, I'm completely fine with that as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest point to hit on with this conversation is the NBA is a copycat league. That the second that a team seems to have the blueprint for how to build a championship contender, everyone follows. And everything's a little different for every team, and there's also ways you can succeed or mess it up in both directions here. And kind of the two sides of the conversation are the build around stars, the big three era, which from all indications, for what Daryl Morey tends to lean toward or what he goes for, that's the direction he's going to go, that he's going to want the big three. That can be successful. We've seen it be successful. Now, lately, the pendulum has certainly swung closer to people wanting to build through role players, having a complete team. The Denver Nuggets very clearly being the blueprint for that. That can work when you get the right pieces in place as well, but there's shortcomings of that as well. Like if you have, say, 8 guys that you believe are ready for your playoff rotation, that these 8 guys can take you to the promised land, then all of a sudden you get to the playoffs and only 5 or 6 of them are actually ready to contribute at the level you thought, you're stuck as well. So it's not as sure of a thing to just go by these role players. And by the way, the other side of it is once you're established as like this high-level role player, you're making a bag as well. Like think about Bruce Brown is making $25 million this year. That's insane. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I think, is probably going to get something similar to that. So, like, as much as, like, I hear the depth conversations, it's not that easy to get control of these guys. And, like, the market is strong because there is such a limited number of those limited role players as well.
Yeah, they're going to have to really, like, Daryl Morey is going to have to do his job now. He has failed.
Yeah.
Because now he's really going to have to search for maybe diamonds in the rough. Maybe you look for, I'm pretty much sure Obi Toppin is now going to warrant a bag, like you said, as far as like what he did for the Pacers in the postseason. But you have to look at, trying to think of like low level guys that nobody would think about.
It's honestly the Ubres.
I gotta check again, but like low. Yeah. You gotta look at like low level guys like that you wouldn't think about that maybe are on another team averaging 6 points or averaging 8. You got to look at their skill set and what they can bring to the Sixers and what they can offer as far as like what are the extra intangible things that they do that we can maybe elevate because we have Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. So like you said, it is going to be rough. Usually those teams are kind of homegrown, but I guess like I said, Daryl Morey is going to have to do his job finally, and we'll see if he is this great GM that everybody claims that he is.
Yeah, and seeing a lot of love for some role players in the chat. The bigs on Dallas absolutely proving why this is so valuable. You see the way Dan Gafford rocks, PJ Washington rocks, Derek Jones Jr. is awesome. That you're seeing the way these guys have been maximized by playing next to stars. That absolutely happens. There's also a lot of love for Kevin Durant in the chat right now. Cliff, I don't see any world where Kevin Durant moves on from the Phoenix Suns this offseason. Do you?
No, not after. This will be his first full season, or was that? No. It was a half season last year, and then this will be his first full season. If I'm,
yeah, second season in Phoenix like that.
Yeah, second season in Phoenix, but first, yeah, no way. And especially after they acquired Brad Bill, there's no way. And if he requests, that's like if James Harden requests out again, then it's like, all right, no. But there's no way. I don't have him doing that. So
yeah, I'm with you. And shout out to DFJ Hoops for the super chat saying salute. Hope to see more of these. That is the plan moving forward. That we're gonna try and carve out kind of a weekly basis. Both me and Cliff got some work obligations shifting around right now, but want to carve out a time where we're here on a week by week basis. But let's keep it rolling today and talk about a couple more guys. Jimmy Butler, Cliff, you do not seem at all interested in Jimmy Butler. Is my read? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not all right. I'm not interested in Jimmy. It's just like he's old, he's injury prone, he doesn't shoot a lot of threes. I honestly hate watching Jimmy play because like it's just, oh my God, I just don't like his game. It's just so like it just looks so stiff. But like he will bring a grittiness and a culture. Like the Sixers need to build a culture. It might be too late. I feel like just because like Joel is a little bit older, but it's something that you should have built a while. They should have built a while ago. It's a whole nother conversation about ownership, but they need some type of culture. When you play the Sixers, you have no idea what you're getting night in and night out. And I think that's an issue. Like when you look at the Nuggets or you look at the Timberwolves or you look at other teams around the league, they have an identity. You know how they're going to play, and even with the Knicks, we knew that they were just going to beat us up and rebound over us. We knew that. I had no idea how the Sixers were going to win each and every night, and I had no idea where it was coming. Is Maxey going to go off? Are we going to get enough rebounds? Like, do we pass the ball? Like, I don't know what the Sixers do to win games, but they win. But they need an identity. Jimmy Butler would bring that. His grittiness. He's tough. He's of course sort of like the CJGJ for the Eagles, but like. I just don't like. He's old, injury prone. You have to trade. Essentially, they're talking about that you're going to have to trade all of your assets and then give him the max. Is way too much to do for an aging Jimmy Butler.
Yeah,
No.
I hear you. I mean, Jimmy Butler will forever be remembered as the one that got away, and he's a guy that honestly the more time that goes by, the more fondly that he is remembered. That I do think people forget with some of the revisionist history for it was not perfect when Jimmy Butler was here, that there's stories of like him not being with the team, him questioning Brett Brown, and by the way, we've seen him have all this success since he left the Sixers down in Miami, going to the finals, and all the success that he's had leading up to that point. The Jimmy Butler we know now was not the Jimmy Butler that we knew then. That at that point in time he had burned through 2 locations, forced trades in 2 different situations with the Bulls, with the Timberwolves, and while like now looking back, he was right about a lot of the things that he called out and the guys that he called out specifically, even here in Philly when beefing with Ben Simmons, those types of things. Like history is remembering Jimmy fondly, but it's not like it was a cup of tea just him being around the organization. There was a lot going on, and even if you were to come back, you got to live with that he's essentially going to take off the regular season, that there's going to be the weird games where he decides, I'm not shooting 3-pointers today. And there's things to like about Jimmy. Honestly, if you pin me down in my heart of hearts right now and said a team with Tyrese Maxey, Jimmy Butler, and Joel Embiid, or a team with Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, and Joel Embiid, I probably think the team with Jimmy Butler goes farther when talking about the playoffs. And even with all the fit that there is Paul George, there is something about that they need this dog, or they're missing this closer or the guy. And Jimmy does check those boxes and lets everyone know about it. Do you believe in that to an extent that, like, I guess the conversation is, do these Sixers need to find a guy to fill that role, or do you believe that either Joel Embiid or Tyrese Maxey could grow into that true alpha moving forward, Cliff?
I think it's too late for Joel. I think we pretty much know who Joel is at this moment. He's just not, and we saw it in game. Was that game 4? He was like completely like out of it. Was that no? That was game 5. He was like completely out of it the entire game. And then like I think we found our closer in Tyrese Maxey. So now I just think they just need a high level wing that is going to produce something in the playoffs. So I don't think they need like this superstar. It will be great because like you said, like the big 3 era is over. It will be great if they got like a Paul George, Jimmy Butler. But I don't think they exactly need it, but I just think that we have our closer in Tyrese Maxey. You focus on that and build around it. Don't try to strip that from him. Make him the closer. He's shown that he can do it. So make him the closer. Make sure Joel defers to him. You get that other wing that can produce in the playoffs, and they're also going to know, all right, Maxey's my closer, and that's another play initiate. That's why I really want like a different shot creator, somebody that can initiate the offense, because now you can have Maxey work off ball in the clutch of the game where the entire defense is staring at him while he's bringing the ball up.
Yeah.
So that's just something that is just completely different.
I very much agree with that. That like as much as it would nice to see Maxey prove to be capable of being a point guard and a true point guard, setting the table for others last year, I still think the best way to optimize him. The dude's a natural scorer, and you shouldn't take that away from him. And he's also like a knockdown catch and shoot 3-point shooter, so create those opportunities for him. So I do agree with you there, and that is a point towards the Jimmy Butlers or Brandon Ingrams here, that those are guys that are a little bit of drive and kick type players, more so than the Paul Georges of the world. He's more likely to take that shot himself, which the pros and cons there as well. Shout out to Torrey Thompson, 870, chiming in saying Jimmy Butler went months without shooting threes in protest when he was here. He had a ton of single-digit games. I also thought he sucked before that Raptor series, LOL. Yeah, I think that is a more accurate representation of a bit of his time here. Cliff, anything on that?
So I saw you tweet, I think it was last week, where you said, I think people are in love with the idea of Jimmy Butler when he was here than what he actually is now. Like Jimmy was, if you look back at that Raptor series, he pissed us off a lot.
Yeah.
during that series. And like we just talked about, like he went months without shooting the ball. He was passing up wide open threes. Jimmy just wasn't that good when he was here. Like people always bring up that team of Ben, Joel, Jimmy, Tobias, and JJ, and then saying like this is what Joel had. Jimmy wasn't that player. That team was together for like 2 months. Like it was no spacing. Like it was really weird. So people are in love with the idea of what Jimmy Butler is now, as opposed to what he was when he was actually here. So I remember I saw you tweet that. I was like, that is exactly right.
Yeah.
That's what people are remembering and then not realizing what is going on now. But
yeah,
I had to just bring that up.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And he's very much benefited from obviously having the success and the big moments that he has. Like, he has been cold-blooded in the playoffs since this point. There's no doubt about it. But, like, to actually predict that to be the case, I think is a little unfair how much that's held against the Sixers. And the conversation is never was Jimmy Butler or Tobias Harris. And the way that, like, Jimmy obviously added fuel to that with the Tobias over me, like, the real conversation was Jimmy Butler or Ben Simmons. Is that there was real beef there from the on-court perspective of Jimmy wanting to have the ball in his hands, Ben having the ball in his hands. And again, we see how both these age that Ben Simmons' career has taken a nosedive, unlike any other player I've ever really seen, and Jimmy Butler has gone on the greener pastures here. But at the time, like, Ben Simmons has played 2 years in the NBA, was Rookie of the Year his first year, and an All-Star his second year at 22 years old. Like, it was fair to be optimistic about what his career could turn into, even though obviously we know how things went. And then Tobias Harris essentially being the beneficiary of the Sixers cashed in all their chips. They put them all in the middle for that season, making the trade for both Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris. With the light at the end of the tunnel being that Jimmy's not coming back, you couldn't let both these guys walk. So Tobias then kind of just stumbled into one of the worst contracts in NBA history. So definitely a lot of revisionist history there. And the point also being that I would like to bring up is don't try and fix things 5 years later. They don't try and give him the contract at 35 that you should have just straight up paid him when he was 29. Like, that's a whole other decision or organizational bad thinking process there. So yeah, as much as I like Jimmy, I would take him. I do think that the idea of Jimmy is very much romanticized here.
Yeah. Like I said, Jimmy made us mad a lot, especially during the Raptors. It was a point where we took him off of Kawhi because Kawhi was frying him so bad. We put Ben on him. Ben turned around and turned himself into an elite. The Ben is seen, and I don't think that's for the time that he was good. I don't think that's even something crazy to say. He was the only player to ever lock down Luka consistently. Nobody else has been able to do that. So it's like when Ben was good, he was really fucking good.
Yeah.
And I think people need to realize that. But the idea of Ben over Jimmy, yes, and I would probably do it again if that was Ben Simmons. If everything still shook out, like, I would do it again because Ben was really good.
Yeah.
So it's like you gotta take that into account. But yeah.
Yeah, people forget that as well because of how sour it ended. That there was a point where this dude was a real deal all-star, high-level player. Those days are certainly in the rear view at this point. I don't think there's any coming back for Ben Simmons, but it is insane to see the drop-off there. Last guy, and to speak to another Sixers mistake that was made here, Mikal Bridges is another guy that is a forever one that almost got away. It does feel like the Nets are starting to trend towards at least considering blowing things up and doing the full rebuild. Personally, I think that they should have made that decision like a year ago. Like, I don't see any reason for Mikal Bridges to still be on this roster. He's a winning player that could absolutely help a contender. I would love it to be the Sixers. If Mikal Bridges is on the market, Cliff, are you interested?
What are they? What is he? How do I want to put this? What does he cost?
Yeah,
that plays a lot into it.
That is the $1 million question. Let's say for the sake of this conversation, it takes all the draft picks. That I think 5 first-round picks is likely what they're going to be asking for. That's too steep for your blood?
Yes. Especially after the season that he had. He probably just didn't want to be there. But I'm sure they're thinking about, like, he's close to home. Why would he want to be there? I mean, they do suck, but it's like 5 draft picks from Mikal Bridges. I wouldn't give up 5 draft picks for Zach LaVine.
Well, yeah, no
way. I love Zach LaVine.
I like Bridges way more.
So I like. You do?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Zach LaVine. I don't know. After the season he had, I don't see. I don't know. Not 5. I don't think you give a 5 picks for an essential role player. If you get what I'm saying.
All right, so let me make.
Like, he had his spurts when he first joined the Nets, and then it's like he had those spurts where you're like, all right, well, Mikal looks like he could be a real number one. And then this season he kind of came back down to earth, and you're like, now I don't know.
All right, let me make the Mikal Bridges pitch for you. I'll make the pitch for you here.
Okay.
So he's 27 years old, still entering his prime. He's certainly in a situation where he's playing above his head as far as role. That we saw him early on in his career in Phoenix look like an ideal complementary guy. To me, he is that 3-and-D archetype of player with some more juice to him, that he can put it on the floor, he can create. When you look at his first season when he got to Brooklyn, averaged 26.1 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.7 assists, shot the ball really well, knocked down from beyond the three-point arc 37.6% on 6.7 attempts per game. This year, where things came down to earth a little bit, 19.6 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 3.6 assists. His shooting regressed in just about every area of the floor, from the three-point arc specifically, still 37.2% and on 7.2 attempts. Now, the greater pitch to me here, when looking at his contract, the Mikal Bridges this year due for $23.3 million, due for next year $24.9 million. When talking about that number, you're bringing him in with those draft picks, and then you have the freedom to sign one of these other guys that we're talking about. Maybe it is Malik Monk. Maybe it is, which would be much more willing to get a Malik Monk when you have Mikal Bridges, who you know could be the guy that's guarding Jason Tatum, or that true guy who can guard a number one perimeter option. So when bringing in that flexibility to think about, you invest those draft picks and then can use your salary cap, does that appeal to you a little bit more?
I need to be more of a contract guy because I didn't know that. So now... So yeah, if you're gonna use all of the picks, 5 picks for Mikal, oh my god,
it's a lot.
If you're gonna use all of the picks for Mikal, but he has a very friendly contract, are we able to get Paul George still, or that's like off the table? Like those type of caliber players, is that still off the table?
I think the full max would be off the table with the 23 there. So you could still offer him, like, for quick math, probably 38 mil, but I don't think Paul George is leaving LA for that.
Okay, cool. So you get Mikal, you get Malik, maybe you try to go get Obi Toppin, you get some of these lower role players. That's a pretty good team.
Yeah.
Like I just have to bring myself to where we had 0 points out of Tobias Harris in a game that they absolutely needed to win, or they were going home. They had 0 points. So you're getting athletic players who can run the floor, who you can give the ball to, and you have full confidence in them that they're going to hit an open shot, and they're all going to play defense to a pretty high level, like outside of Malik Monk maybe, but he's going to give you that excitement factor, that scoring factor, but you add a bunch of players around Joel and Tyrese to where the defense cannot solely focus on them. Where they're not like, all right, well, that's Kyle Lowry, I can close out late, or that's Nick Batum, I can close out late. Like just players like that where you're like, where the defense isn't exactly worried about them. As long as you don't have those players on the roster anymore, and you add these players that strike some type of fear in an opposing defense, it's absolutely the way to go. I think that it absolutely works, and I'm definitely on board with that. I'm so glad you pointed that contract out, because now I might be on board.
Yeah,
I think I might have to switch up my top 5.
I think I fired myself up a little bit for sure. But of course, that starts with the Nets even being willing to deal, which is not a certainty right now. There's a couple more names that keep popping here. And it is nice how much that there are the moving parts around the NBA. It does feel like a domino is going to go down, and a lot leads to a lot here. Now, there's 2 guys that I've kind of been operating under the certainty that they're going to re-sign with their teams. Both guys that made midseason acquisitions, that being the Pacers getting Pascal Siakam and the Knicks getting OG Anunoby. Now, by all signs, it does seem like the Pacers are going to hand Pascal Siakam that max contract, that he's not going to be leaving there. Per the latest Jake Fisher article, doesn't seem as certain as it goes to OG Anunoby. So, Cliff, if either one of those guys were to hit the open market and there was a chance to get them, where would they kind of stack up in this conversation for how much you prioritize them for the Sixers?
Yeah, I think if Pascal got if he got on the free agent market, I think you absolutely go after him. You absolutely offer him the max. He showed that he is a player that can play up to the standard of somebody you can give the ball to, and he can go get a bucket, and he can play defense. He can rebound. He can push the floor where you don't have to be like, all right, well, I'll get the rebound. I have to look for Tyrese now. Like, he can push the floor and initiate the offense as well. Like, that's somebody I'm okay with. Now, he does kind of occupy in the same like little area as Joel, but Joel played with Ben Simmons and PJ Tucker. They'll figure it out. I'm not exactly worried about that. OG Anunoby, I'm a little bit sour on, because when he played versus the Sixers, to me, he looked bad. He like it was times where he couldn't dribble. Like it was really weird. Like he was knocking those open shots. Like, don't get me wrong, like this stuff is something the Sixers absolutely need. But like giving a max contract to a player that I'm worried about him being dribbling or creating his own shot, like, I don't want to give that type of money to the bias all over again.
Yeah.
So I just don't want to give that money to like an OG Anunoby. Now, if you get him here cheaper, I'm all for it. But like a max contract, absolutely not. He just looked really bad as far as doing other things on a basketball court outside of shooting an open three or rebounding.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you that I do think that Daryl Morey should regret not going more all in for Pascal when he was available. But then again, it's a similar situation with OG specifically. I was afraid to trade for OG because of the exact position the Knicks are in here. That you just traded Emmanuel quickly and the draft capital and everything else that it took to get that deal done, RJ Barrett, and now you got to pay the man. And I don't know if that is going to be a contract that ages particularly well. That fits the Tobias Harris kind of criteria for me. That you obviously, he's perfect for what they need him. You saw the record with OG and the difference and all these factors. So it makes sense to keep him, absolutely. But that's a lot of money for a guy who may never make an all-star game. That to this point he has not. And I don't know how much higher the ceiling is. He's a great defender. He's great for what they need. And the Jalen Brunson contract gives them a little bit of wiggle room to kind of stagger this. But I do think from the Sixers' perspective, if you're getting into a bidding war over OG Anunoby, it's better to call out on that one and say, we're on to the next one. So is it you would have Paul George above both these guys, assuming that they're straight up free agents?
Yeah, I think I would. I think it would be a lot closer with Pascal.
Yeah.
Pascal and Paul George. I would still have Paul George above Pascal, but it'll be a lot closer. Like I wouldn't be mad at either one, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So let's kind of wrap things up by giving some rankings exactly how we have them here. So I'll throw these full names at you. So we'll start with Paul George, Jimmy Butler, LeBron. We're going to exclude LeBron because I think it's out.
All right.
Well, actually, what percentage would you say that LeBron actually becomes available?
So I think a lot of people think it's 0. I think it's a little bit higher than that. I think that there is some type of possibility. So I'll put it about like 20-30%. Like I don't think like it'll happen, but it's definitely not 0 to what I think people are trying to say.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you there. That
like
in my head I was gonna go 10. So I was gonna say like I don't see it happening, but I don't think it's 0 either. I do think them signing JJ is kind of like indicating that he's gonna stay. So whatever that means there. So let's exclude him for the sake of this. So we'll talk Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Mikal Bridges, Brandon Ingram, and Zach LaVine. So that'll be our 5 there. So once again, Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Mikal Bridges, Brandon Ingram, and Zach LaVine. Rank those 1 through 5 for me.
All right. So 1 would be Zach LaVine.
Okay.
2 would be, oh, that's tough because then we just talked about it. All right. So 2 would be Paul George.
Okay.
3, I'll move up Mikal because of everything that you can do as far as his contract and building around him, Joel, and Tyrese. Jimmy Butler at 4, age, injury prone, max contract, have to trade all your assets, can't even build around the team at that point. And then Brandon Ingram, just because he's long, lanky, tattooed Tobias Harris. So, better than Tobias Harris, but still no. So yeah, so Zach LaVine, Paul George, Mikal Bridges, Jimmy Butler, Brandon Ingram.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to have a little bit of different list here. And by the way, I've seen both Ingram and Tobias do like the cardinal sin to me of pump faking out of a good 3-point look to take a tough mid-range too. They both do it all the time, which is maddening there. As far as my rankings here, I'm starting number 1 with Mikal Bridges. That would be the top of my list. If he becomes available, you go get him and you keep that flexibility. Keeps the window open a little longer, him still being 27. And I do see a world where you can find a third guy, maybe even in the post Embiid, that it's Maxey, Bridges, and somebody that you're talking about still a contender there. So I would put Bridges at number 1. I would put Paul George at number 2. For me, this is just too great of an opportunity to pass up the fact that you can just sign this guy if he hits free agency, keep all the assets intact. So I'll go Mikal Bridges 1, Paul George 2. I'll go Jimmy Butler 3, Zach LaVine 4, and Brandon Ingram 5 is mine. And the Jimmy stuff is like going against my brain. This is a heart versus brain thing, but it does feel like, dude, a Jimmy Butler added to this team, they're not that far off. And if he can be just a little bit of the guy to generate offense for others, to take some big shots, this team could win a championship. So that would be my 5 there. That once again, it would be Mikal Bridges 1, Paul George 2, Jimmy Butler 3, Zach LaVine 4, and Brandon Ingram is my list there.
Yeah, I have no problem with that, especially moving Mikal to 1. Like I can see that. Like, I'll be completely on board with that. And as far as like adding Mikal and adding around it, because like I'm just a big proponent on adding a team around everybody. It has to be a full, complete team. Like everybody has to play some type of significant role. I don't want it to where, oh my God, well, he's getting in the game now.
Yeah.
And then you have to worry about the non-Joel Embiid minutes, things like that. But I could definitely see Mikal at one. I see the flexibility with Paul George as well. Then going down to Jimmy Butler is like we all know, like it's a more heart than mind thing. But like you said, the who Jimmy Butler is as a player, you could absolutely be bought in on it, and you can see how he could take them to the next level. Zach LaVine, know how I feel about him. Brandon Ingram is just whatever. Like if they get him, I'll obviously talk myself into him, and I'll just act like whatever he does is way better than Tobias, which it is to an extent, but it's like whatever. But I'm completely fine with that list.
Yeah, it's gonna end up being Brandon Ingram, isn't it, man? Like,
Yes. Yep. And then he's going to forget how to do everything that he was good at. That's what I've been struggling with as well. I'm like, even if we do get any player, they're just going to forget how to shoot and play basketball anyway. So I don't even know why we're doing this to ourselves.
Yeah. I do want to throw one more name and shout out to rgross1967 in the chat here. Brandon Ingram, I mean, not Brandon, DeAndre Hunter is an interesting name and a guy that I think fits the category of a player who in a new location could be the beneficiary there. Any interest in DeAndre Hunter?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been looking at DeAndre Hunter for a while. I thought they would have been made a trade for him. Like it feels like always like towards the beginning or middle of the season, like he's always there's some report saying like he's going to be available.
Mm-hmm.
But then they just never it just dies away, it goes away, and they just never deal him. So I don't know what's going on there. He would be perfect. I actually have him on my team in 2K, but neither here nor there. But yeah, like DeAndre Hunt, that'll be great. I'll be completely on. But I thought like a deal for him would have been had, but I guess they just aren't making them as available as reports say.
Yeah, it is tough. Making $21.7 million this year, $23 million next year, and $25 million the following. So a decent contract size there. That is a guy that I think is. I mean, the Hawks are a mess in general, and I think a lot of those guys could just use a change of scenery and are the potential players that you could pick and make winners. But we'll see how things shake out. I do think that they're ultimately going to be waiting for that big fish, whoever that big star is, before they search for any of the complementary pieces around him, which I do understand for that from a logic standpoint. So before we shut things down here, Cliff, what else you got going on? I know the Off the Cliff show and a bunch more you got cooking.
Oh yeah, Off the Cliff show. If you guys want to follow me on YouTube, just regular Off of the Cliff show. Just posted my ranking of my top 5 and who I wanted and why on my YouTube channel. You can also just follow me on Twitter. I tweet about the Sixers, maybe some controversial things on there, but I'm just a fan at the end of the day. Who cares? But it's underscore Yo Cliff, so underscore YOCLIFF. If you want to go follow me on there, talk about the Sixers pretty much all day in basketball. So yeah, if you guys want to subscribe, follow me, whatever. But that's where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you're getting locked in and tapping in with Cliff's content over there. Some awesome stuff coming out. We'll have a ton more coming out on Sixers Digest as well, that I do want to carve out a time where we're doing these lives a little more often, especially as things seem to liven up and some pieces begin to fall into place. And shout out to Riaz for the super chat here. Appreciate you. And he's saying, love the show. Do either of you have interest in Miles Bridges? He seems like he would be a good fit with Maxey and Embiid. Do you think he would be on Morey's radar? Thanks, guys. So any thoughts on Miles Bridges before we get out of here, Cliff?
That's a tricky as a player, yeah. Absolutely. As a person, no. That's it's really tricky with Miles Bridges, and I can see how the fan base will react if they did sign him. But like as a player, absolutely. As a person, no.
Yeah.
But that's just where I'm at with it. So
I'm pretty much in the same boat here that I would not be willing to take, I think, the sacrifice of, I guess, like, you know, looking at a person in eye and believe I'm willing to make this guy face of my franchise here with Miles Bridges, whether that is fair or unfair there. But as a talent, he's definitely a really good basketball player and a guy that derailed his career quite a bit with some off-court actions there. So we'll see how things shake out. It wouldn't shock me if he's on Morey's radar because Morey is a guy who could look at that. He's a guy that tends to see numbers a little more than faces at times, so it wouldn't surprise me if he's saying that's a better player than his market might fully show, and maybe that is appealing to Daryl. So might be more on the Daryl radar than ours here, but whatever. We will see how that shakes out. But appreciate all you guys for.
How would we even cheer for him?
Yeah, it makes it tough. I can't believe he's playing NBA basketball currently. But yeah, tough scene there. But we are going to wrap it up for the night. We will be back for more of these lives throughout the rest of the offseason. Thank you guys for hanging us with here on Sixers Digest. Make sure you are smashing that subscribe button if you did not just yet. Appreciate each and one of you again, and talk next time. Peace. And end this bad boy here. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. All right, cool. There's got a nice
great.
nice $12